the nutrients that you need for bones is a long list. But I put this up here, even though it's kind of boring and it's a long list, because I just wanted you to have an appreciation for how complex bone building, bone health really is. And that if you're going to supplement, just supplementing with calcium is potentially not going to be very productive. And in some cases can cause harm because you're not getting all these other cofactors that you need. So obviously calcium is very important and well established. Vitamin D too, I feel like that's well established and most people in our population are aware. Although there are some caveats about vitamin D, it's going to be much more effective if you make it yourself by being in UV light. So that light is prevalent in the summer in Wisconsin and not very prevalent in the colder months. If you take a calcium with vitamin D, there's a growing body of research that shows it's not going to end up where you want it in your bones. It might actually end up in your blood vessels and arteries. If you want to supplement with a vitamin D, the safest thing to do is to take it with a vitamin K, and even better to take it with some of these other cofactors like vitamin A too. So switching to a vitamin D with K will help make sure that the calcium that you're taking is making its way into the bones rather than other unwanted places. Magnesium is also very important. In fact, I am very reluctant to suggest a calcium supplement for most people without at least a magnesium, because the two are very important and the ratio of the two is important. Vitamin K, I already mentioned, is important for making sure that a calcium and a D supplement don't increase problems of plaquing. But vitamin K is also very important for the synthesis of bone protein. And if you have osteoporosis, you've probably been faced with the choice of whether or not to take a drug like Fosamax or another bisphosphonate drug. And the problem with those drugs is that they block your vitamin K production. And so that's why there have been lawsuits about how the jaw bones of some people taking those have suffered, or their teeth or healing in the mouth has suffered. It's because of this vitamin K issue. In a few minutes, I'll talk about a specific supplement that helps work around this if you are taking one of those prescriptions. B vitamins, including folic acid, B12, and B6, are very important. Without them, the bones are much more fragile. Somebody who's on a vegetarian diet, if they're not taking a good supplement of this and tracking their progress, will be more susceptible to these low B vitamins. You cannot get them from chicken. You need to be eating red meat to get these. So people that are eating more of a plant-based or vegetarian diet may need to have their levels checked and closely monitored to make sure they're getting enough of these for bone health. Copper is also very important. It helps to stabilize that protein matrix. It also controls the rate at which bone is resorbed or broken down. And copper is very high in shellfish and organ meats. Manganese is found in almost all foods. It's very important too, but depending on how depleted the soil is, it may not be as prevalent. And for all of these different vitamins and minerals, the more sugar a person consumes and the more stress that they're under, in general, the lower levels these are, because the body's going to be using up more of these nutrients to compensate for the high sugar or the high stress, whether or not it's emotional stress or some kind of physical stress or trauma or something else. Zinc is very important. Zinc is very high in animal meats and proteins. Also, pumpkin seeds are a good source of zinc. Boron is one of those little known minerals that seems to really help with reducing bone loss. It can be taken as a supplement. It's also high in prunes, and there have been some studies showing that eating more prunes regularly can help with bone density. Strontium is another little known mineral that helps with bones, and you've got to have it just right. You don't want to take too much and you don't want to take too little. Supplements that include it typically include about 1 gram daily, but it is found in the peel of root vegetables and in some other natural foods. Phosphorus is very important, and I'm almost to the end of the list on this slide, so thanks for hanging in there with me. Phosphorus is very high in animal protein. Vitamin C, as I mentioned before, is an important precursor for collagen, which is how part of the matrix in the bone. Too little vitamin C can cause fractures, more bone breaks. And then vitamin A in the right amount is also very important. So, since people commonly supplement with calcium, I wanted to talk a little bit about the calcium types. Calcium carbonate is the most common form of calcium that you find on the market, but it's very difficult for some people to absorb. Calcium carbonate is essentially the same as rock, like limestone. It's chemically the same. And so as you think of a body aging and not absorbing as much easily, or you just think of somebody with a more sensitive digestive system, then we're going to understand that you're not going to get as good of a result with calcium carbonate. So those people who have low stomach acid have been shown in studies to not do as well with calcium carbonate. And some studies show that there are negative health outcomes of taking calcium. I'll talk about those in a moment. I would say some of the best calcium supplements to consider would be food-based ones. Standard Process is a local supplement company in Wisconsin, and they grow all of the food that they put into their supplements. So they're very food-based. So they have a wafer that you can chew with meals called Calcifood, and they're going to be coming out with a gluten-free version of that. So that's a great example of one. Or you might want to consider a calcium hydroxyapatite or a calcium malate. These are chelated forms of calcium. They have more accessible calcium in them, and some studies show, that they can be slightly better than taking like a calcium carbonate, for example, in terms of your net improvement in bone mass. So I mentioned that there have been some studies showing negative effects of calcium, particularly in older women. It seems that there's a correlation between calcium supplementation and dementia. And when scientists drilled down further in this correlation, what they found was that women who had a cerebrovascular disease, so women who had had a stroke, for example, were much more likely to develop dementia from calcium supplementation than other people. This is probably because the calcium is going into the brain cells. And if there's already existing disease there, there's probably low nutrients. And so too much calcium is not always a good thing. Also, the calcium can lead to plaquing, and plaquing in blood vessels to the brain would also be counterproductive for cognitive health. So this is an example if you want to take a bone health supplement that's broader, that's got all of these different mineral cofactors that I'm talking about that are important to the brain. Here's an example of one that's, kind of middle of the road. You can see that it's got a lot of the different nutrients that I was mentioning before. It's got D, K, the B vitamins, folate, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, selenium, on and on. So this is an example of one. This pro bono is kind of the Cadillac version of supplementation for bone health, I think. You can see, I don't know if you can read it, but I just put the label up there so you could see how broad it is. It's really like a multivitamin for someone with osteoporosis. And that, of course, that sounds great. Women actually, and men take this product, but more so women, just because they tend to have more issues with osteoporosis than men. And some have found actually that their bone density improves with this supplement, but for most at least, it stops the loss of bone density, which is really remarkable for a supplement. The trade-off is that you've got to take a handful of supplements in the morning and a handful every evening. It comes in these packs. So I actually have a bunch of these loose packs. If anybody wants a free sample, you can reach out to me outside of the lecture, send me an email. The other thing that's important for managing bone health is our hormonal health. As we get older, our sexual hormones diminish. It's our adrenals that take over, making them for women when the ovaries stop. And of course, for men, men experience changes and shifts and decline in their sexual hormones with aging too. So it's very important to measure your hormone levels and then take different steps to improve hormone levels. And if someone works one-on-one with me, I can help them with taking over-the-counter hormone precursors or help direct them to a doctor who can do bioidentical hormone replacement if that's needed. So it's kind of an individual thing, just like diet is a very individual thing. There is a bone health panel that I order for people that will measure their sexual hormones in their saliva, as well as have this Pyrolinx D urine test. Pyrolinx D is a marker for bone loss. And so rather than wait for however long you need to for your next DEXA scan, you can do the Pyrolinx D test with a practitioner like myself to see if the different interventions you're doing, like you're going to change your diet, you're going to cut back on coffee, maybe cut out soda pop, do strength training, you can actually measure to see if it's reducing your rate of bone loss. So that's kind of cool. Other tests that you can order that help assess this would be a comprehensive metabolic panel, a red blood cell magnesium, zinc or copper test. These are basic tests that most doctors will run for people. It's up to the doctor, of course, to decide if they're going to run it for someone, but these would help me to see if there's absorption issues and, just get a look at some of the nutrient cofactors to see if someone needs to make specific dietary changes or supplement to help. There's also something called a micronutrient panel. SpectraCell Labs is my favorite source for that. And that helps test all these nutrient cofactors, except for the ones I highlighted. So the boron, strontium, and phosphorus, might have to dig around and try to find another lab or another way to test those. But at least with the micronutrient, you get a look at all the other labs. And that can be helpful, especially if someone is wondering about a dietary change they're making or some supplement interventions they're doing to see if, their levels are good enough.